Hello and welcome to Activating Magic. I'm here with Maria Bowler. Hi, Maria.
Hi, thanks for having me.
She is a writer, coach, and retreat leader. She holds a master's in religion and the arts from Yale University. Maria is a former magazine editor and has taught creative writing at the university level. Canadian by birth, she now lives in the driftless region of the US with her and her family. And she is the author of Making Time, a new vision for crafting a life beyond productivity. So I'm excited to talk about how going beyond productivity connects to your magic. But
hmm
first, just like share a little bit about yourself and what brought you to the work of being an author and a coach and retreat leader.
Mm. Yeah, so as a kid, I always wanted to be a writer of some kind. And I also had a lot of creative blocks for a variety of reasons, some of them inherited. But I think I was really meant to go through the process of deeply understanding what it is that is happening when we are creatively blocked.
Mm,
So I became very sensitive to my own resistance around writing, and as well as my desire to be a writer. And as I had various cycles in my career, some of them involved being an editor, so working with people who were trying to produce things. Also as a spiritual director, so sitting across from people who were would describe to me what was going on in their inner world. And I noticed that a lot of the themes were similar. It didn't matter what we were talking about when it came to whether it was, I want to have a thriving creative practice, or I want to be writing this particular thing, or why can't I just go and do the thing I really want to do?
mm,
That it didn't matter what it was. The inner narratives were the same and they were really recognizable to me.
mm,
There was a lot of shame. Why can't I? There must be something wrong. There must be something in my routine I can just fix, or in my circumstance, if I could just discipline myself harder, then I surely would,
right.
right? Like wouldn't be experiencing this struggle. Um, and of course, for more shame and more forcing and more discipline just never worked for me, and it never worked for the
Mm.
people that I was sitting across from. So I became um, deeply curious about what else was there, and so now I really work with the themes of creativity and spirituality, and also how that connects to how we relate to the world in a broader way.
Mm. So you've made some significant changes at various times in your path, right? From the spiritual guidance, from, teaching at university.
Yeah.
And what role did your magic or your inner guidance play in some of those moves?
Ooh. I remember the moment that I knew that I had to leave the MFA program I was in
Mm,
really clearly. I've had a few moments like this, but the most the recent one actually was that decision to make a pivot from what is a terminal degree, meaning you can teach with
mm,
an MFA, and that was sort of the goal at the time.
yeah.
Um, I had I was looking forward to that, and yet I kept having this nudge, like it's not here, it's not here. So this isn't
Mm.
where
How did
the
that show up for you? Was it like a voice in your head, or was it like experiencing certain things and feeling a no?
yeah, it was experiencing things and feeling a no. And to be more specific, I think um it's experiencing not being able to be fully expressed. So
Mm,
knowing a little bit about the magics that you talk about, I think that would relate to my expression magic, which I
Yeah.
didn't have words for a long time. And what's crazy about those moments is that logically it makes no sense that I'm experiencing it. Meaning, like on the surface, nothing is wrong, but I'm
Mhm.
experiencing, oh, I can't be fully expressed here.
I can't be me.
Yeah, yeah.
Were there certain like rules or guidelines that caused that you bumped up against that made you feel that way?
Yes, and I think that's a common thread in a lot of the pivots I've made is me entering into a certain space and then meeting rules and guidelines that uh, ultimately would not work for my highest flourishing. So that didn't mean that I didn't get a lot out of each experience, but I would say in the MFA program, there were certain kinds of questions that people were interested in asking that weren't the questions I was interested in asking. Certain styles, like so people, and this is
People
what,
like the students or
yeah,
the teachers or
the
okay.
students and the teachers. I remember one teacher handed out a list of things that made good writing.
Mm.
And I had never seen that before. Um, it's not a, it's not wrong, but it also was profoundly unhelpful. And
Mm.
it served to sort of make me feel as though now I had to conform to this list of things that were valued by this one person. And I remember slipping that piece of paper into the garbage on my way out of class. Um, because while it was good advice, I don't think that um, that kind of prescriptive advice is sort of transferable
Yeah.
to to bringing out
Mm.
what's true in someone. So
Ooh, say
um,
more about that. So if we think about creativity and bringing forth what's true in someone,
yeah,
how are
yeah,
those connected?
um, yeah. So actually, there's this interview with the comedian and writer Bill Hader where he articulates it really well. He says, if you're showing someone your work and they have a solution for how to fix it, their solution is always wrong. But they might have an intuition about about where the problem is
Mhm.
in the
Mhm.
work. They might say, "Oh, there's something in between that scene and that couple."
Mhm.
Um, and then they give you a solution for how to fix it. They're wrong about the solution, but
Okay.
they might be right about the fact that they're noticing something somewhere.
Mhm.
And so I think a lot of advice is just it's given on the level of doing. Just do this thing,
Yes.
and you will have the energy that I have around it. You'll
Mm.
have the relationship, and it doesn't work that way. It's not transferable. So
Yeah. It's much more complicated than that.
yeah, because if we can absolutely replicate, um, for example, you could say all the right things on a date, but if
Mhm.
you're feeling in yourself weird about what you're saying,
Mhm.
the impact of the relationship with that person is going to be off. So I think that's the subtlety.
Yes. Interesting. I think for me as a coach, early on, watching my own coaches and mentors have answers and solutions and go do this, there was the tendency to feel like that's how I should have an answer, right? And
Yeah,
I'm an engineer, as you know, by training. And so, you get answers, like
right.
everything is about problem solution, problem answer, problem answer. And the magics actually have helped me so much to be able to, instead of coming to a conclusion from what my intuition is saying, to be able to say, well, it just feels kind of like this. What's
Yep,
that mean to you?
yep,
But our society is very solution oriented. Or
yeah,
you, like, as you say, in the world of doing.
yeah, exactly.
So instead of just saying the intuition, people will say the doing. So
Hmm.
talk more about that. Talk about your philosophies when you help creatives.
Yeah, my philosophy is about trusting what's in the way. like trusting resistance as
Mm,
having a missing piece of information, usually because something has been shamed. Something
mm,
is not fully online, a part of ourselves. Maybe it's um, it could be a very sweet energy that isn't quite feel safe to be online, or it could be a very pointy thing. It could be just something that um, it doesn't isn't fully there, but we experience the lack of it. So we think it's a problem because right, like our everyday life, in our everyday life, we think we just want things to go well. We think we just
yeah.
want things to go from point A to B without any problems. Um, but as you know, as a coach, right, it's always in those hiccups where we're seeing something, where we're encountering something that our conscious selves thinks we don't want, but
Yes.
is but there's always juice there. So in the creative process, that can look like I'm really bored with my work and I don't know why. I don't want to be bored with my work. I want to be producing a bunch of things. And yet I can't. And usually, we try to push past the problem and pretend it's not there. And then we get to a point where we can't force past it anymore.
Mhm. Push
And
through the resistance.
yep, yep, because it's inconvenient. And I have a lot of empathy for that. Um, and yet in the example of, let's say you're bored, um cool, let's get closer to the boredom. Let's find out what part of you is um done with what is currently happening. And that doesn't mean that you actually have to change everything, but it means that there's some um you keep changing as a person, and so there's some part of you that is now ready to come online. It could be in my work, I have been um far too hands-on, or in my work I've been far too sweet and accommodating, and I'm feeling frustrated with it, but I'm not willing to say that, so it's going to come out as being bored. So my philosophy has to do with getting really curious about um, the obstacles in our way as hidden information.
Mm.
And it can get to a point where we actually get interested and excited more than we get annoyed when we are hitting a roadblock.
I love that. Gosh, where was that? I was just having a conversation about this, about how, our soul leaves Easter eggs for us in the form of whatever patterns we created through the family we chose to go into, that
Hmm.
through the uncovering of them, really we discover ourselves and our soul gifts.
Oh, I love that.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm hearing in what you're saying.
Yeah, it's so real.
And I'm trying to remember, did I say that or did someone say that? It was in my group program. But that came up. Yeah. Um, Talk about doing from the standpoint of the book. So, um, making time feels like a double entendre. Yeah.
Hmm.
Like making time for your art as well as it's time to be a maker. Yes.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So, but we're mostly not taught to be a maker by your definition. We're
Yeah.
taught to be a doer.
Yeah.
So let's start with that. So the book has, for those listening, the book has three main kind of categories of the doing, the undoing,
Hmm.
and making.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's start with doing.
Yeah. Um, so this is where, when we're in a space of doing, it's that we think that every problem we encounter, including problems we're experiencing in ourselves, like sadness or tiredness or boredom, it needs to be attacked from the level of doing something right, doing more, or doing better. We just think there's a task that we
Yeah.
could, like, and that we need, and that we have to do it to fix ourselves constantly. Um, this comes from a profound identity that I think our culture hands us, that says you are what you do. You are a producer. So you are the results that show up in your life. You're the experience you create for your family. You yourself are nothing outside of what you do. It's no one says that to us directly, or I think maybe few people would say that directly.
Yeah.
Um, but I think a lot of us know it by a haunting sensation at the end of the day, telling us how did I use my time today?
Mm.
One of the things that I really want to evoke in the title is that our experience of time is different when we are acting as a producer. So someone who has to like maximize and optimize our days versus when we are experiencing ourselves as a maker who is someone who participates in life. I mean, we all know what an hour feels like when we are forcing ourselves to knock out 20 emails versus what an hour feels like when we are in a collaborative conversation with a friend. Our
Mm.
experience of time is different. And one of the things that I want to offer is that we can notice when we are in a productivity mindset and an identity, when we are experiencing our time as an obstacle, as a problem to solve, as an
Mm.
urgent
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. I know I've seen times where I have all this to do and this much time, and I'm going to try to be productive and nothing happens. And then there's times where there's 7 minutes before I need to be on Zoom. And like I can make a sandwich and I can do all the
Yes.
things. And it's like, wow, I still have 3 minutes left. How is that possible?
Isn't that wild? Yeah, it's so real. I I don't I think it has to do with how much we are in resistance to what is with our life, with reality, when we're like, oh no, all I see is problems. Like all I see is
Yeah.
things that need to be fixed.
So
That,
the doing, there's a lot of fixing in the doing.
yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because what else is there but tasks? Like when we are in the identity of being a producer, the only way we can really relate to our life is through tasks. And when we're looking for that, we'll find it. We'll
Yeah.
find endless things to be responding to. And that tends to feel bad and overwhelming.
Yeah. You know, I'm guessing you've thought about this because you are a thinker. Um, so you may or may not have an answer. In the being a producer, where did we decide that we were producers?
Mhm.
What's the root of that in your assessment?
In the first chapter of the book, I give a very loose history of um, the development of capitalism and industrialization, although I don't necessarily use those words. But I talk about how there was a time in history where we didn't have clocks and we
Mm.
didn't have a objectified relationship to our day. It wasn't like a thing we would look at like like a clock or an app that we thought we could manage. There was just where the sun was and what was happening around us. And um, that eventually slowly changed where um, our time and our schedules became more and more objectified. And that hit a peak um, in the industrialization period where there was a open embrace of scientific management of every area of life. So you need to scientifically manage every task to make it the most efficient possible. This began in factories, but it was recommended to, you know, people who in the domestic sphere, in the
Yeah.
religious sphere. And so we've internalized it and we don't even know that we've internalized that there is actually this is a relatively novel invention that we see every task in terms of efficiency, but that was invented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. It's mind-blowing to imagine that there could be a time where if you said, "Did you get a lot done today?" People would be like, "What are you even saying?" It wouldn't
Right.
compute.
Right.
That's awesome. Objectification of the day. I'm going to be thinking about that. So then what's undoing
Yeah.
about? So if we've learned this and it's relatively recent,
Yeah.
how do we undo it?
Right. So in the middle chapter of the book, I try to say, okay, if we step outside the identity of being a producer where we are looking at our life in terms of our task, what is left when we put giant brackets around that? What do we have to guide us as far as making decisions, as far as just what we noticed if we're not just noticing the problems to be solved? And I think your work overlaps with this quite a bit. Like what we have left is a whole inner world of intuition and clues. I call it the inner knowing in the book, where we have forms of guidance and we have nudges and ways of asking questions that are just inherent to us by the gift of existing. That if we are able to be with ourselves long enough, we can notice
Mm.
them. Um, Often we are a little nervous about these hints and nudges and this kind of way of being, but it is in our being a whole guidance system by existing.
Be with ourselves long enough. So what what is the reason that people can't do that? Let's
Mm-hmm.
start with that.
It's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind is, I mean, if I can just speak from my own experience, is guilt and shame. It's assuming that there's something else that should be happening in
Mm.
me. Like, let's say I am whatever I'm experiencing, if I'm experiencing grief or I'm experiencing excitement and a lot of energy. I think the baseline assumption of like being a productive, citizen in the capitalist machine um, is to simply be like efficient. So anything else that is exceeds that status quo or it seems to be getting in the way, we just assume is like a problem to be solved. So we wouldn't want to be with that because we would want to just get on to the next problem to solve.
Right. So
Because
if things felt peaceful, that wouldn't be great. We'd need a new problem.
oh my gosh, I mean, how many times have I experienced that in my day? Just wait a minute. Um, Things are just happening, or um, oh, I have a lot of creative energy. I actually have more energy than I normally do in a day. That feels overwhelming. Does that mean that I have to replicate this feeling every day? And how am I going to maintain this? Like even positive feelings can feel
Put a
like a
system in place.
yes, exactly. Now I need to systematize for this. Exactly. So even like subjectively positive experiences are like disorienting.
Hmm. What this is making me curious about systems. If we, one of the things I know about you, you grew your Instagram following
Mhm.
tremendously. You got a book deal, like a
Right.
actual advance for your book, which probably is a whole other conversation about then the doing versus the
Yeah.
being. But there's a level of integrity with your work that you have to hold, right? Or
Yep.
that you choose to hold, that you're committed to,
Yep.
that then means I'm being a maker. And so in the world of running a business, for example, and I was just having this is so fascinating. The conversation I had before this was with someone who kind of came to that place of realizing my productivity is my identity. and I've got to let it go. And now what?
Yeah.
And his work is a lot in marketing and
Hmm.
in the coaching world, and kind of letting go of a lot of the things that he'd learned about, or like, this isn't actually fulfilling anything. We're successful,
Hmm.
my clients are successful, but it's not fulfilling anything.
Hmm.
So, how has it been for you creating form to your
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
without being productive?
Yeah. Oof. Yeah. Okay. Layers and layers of answers to that, but it's a totally fair question. Especially because on one level, I think when people hear me talk about this, they think um I am saying do nothing, or I'm saying um
Yeah, we haven't got to the
yeah,
making part yet.
right,
So,
right. Or I'm saying just go with your mood, right? And like mood is a different thing. Um, so, but to answer the question you actually asked, I think that giving form to something without, for me, without stepping into a like hustly, graspy kind of place,
yeah.
um, had to do with seeing it instead as a relationship that I was engaging in, um, as opposed to a project I have to manage. And of course,
Mm,
there's always pieces that I'm that
yeah.
managing, but um, in you don't have to force yourself to want to hang out with a friend that you like. I mean, okay, maybe we have some days where we're feeling really tired, but if we just think about a relationship that we are interested in having, it's not
Mm,
something that we need to discipline ourselves into engaging in. We're just engaging like where we're at. And then it grows and it develops and it there are moments of challenge in any relationship that bring up stuff, just but it's not a it's not a thing that we're trying to control the other person. We're just in a relationship, and the frame that I'm
mm,
offering in the book is like, how can we be in a relationship with our
mhm.
process where we're staying engaged? It's not about like doing more or doing less. It's like, how are we seeing our work as a thing that we are in a dynamic with rather than a like I'm the subject and it's the object and like this is a thing I have like a widget that I have to like move around on the board
Yeah. As efficiently as possible.
as efficiently as possible. Yeah. So the way that the Instagram thing happened was I saw it as a forum where I could be in an exciting relationship with the my ideas.
Mm,
Um, I genuinely got something out of that dynamic, out of showing up to it. It didn't feel like mere output.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it felt like a playground. And that is also how the book happened. It the book felt like a playful place where
Mm.
I was showing up. And there were moments that didn't feel like that. And of course there's just like stuff to work through, like any relationship. But um, yeah, it was a gift.
Yeah. So many questions. I am curious about the resistance then that might show up. So you have this exciting relationship,
Mhm.
and it's making me think of this client I had years ago, and she was a writer, so
Mm,
deep and um, really committed to her knowledge. And
mm,
she said, she kept being mad that she had to write marketing, even though she's a writer, like it would make her mad that she had to sit and write marketing.
yeah.
And then she had an epiphany one day about space for marketing. And we created this phrase, love up your marketing. And like, if you
Mm,
can't love it up, don't do it.
yeah.
When you're talking about productivity and efficiency and all these concepts, the idea of taking time and space and making it fun and creative. Like for me, I lay out big paper and colored markers, and no matter what I'm doing, it's like we're going to start there and it's going to look really weird until it makes any sense. But I have kept that phrase, that love up your marketing. And if
Mhm.
you can't, then don't do it. So when you're talking about the relationship, when you
Yeah,
love up a relationship, it thrives, right?
exactly. Yes. And it, because it assumes that there is a there there. I think often in marketing or sort of a public facing material, we feel like we're speaking into a void and we're trying to convince the void to like us.
Mm.
Like, no wonder we don't want to do it because that feels terrible.
Yes.
But if we assume that, like, no, it's a well, first of all, there are real beings on the other side of what we're doing, and we can
Yeah.
forget that, or we can paint them as beings who are kind of indifferent to us and don't like us.
Mm.
But if we think of it as like a genuine space of relationality, then we're like, wait, I know how to be in a relationship, even if it's just like the kind of relationship I have with my dog or with nature.
Mhm.
Like that is something we actually get, and it feels more real.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you are in an exciting the platform of Instagram for you was like being
Hmm.
in an exciting relationship with your ideas.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I'm thinking as people choose their platform for
Hmm.
whatever it is, as you choose your platform, like this would be my platform right now. Like it should feel like an exciting place.
Yes.
Um, and then you said the book was a playful relationship, and then sometimes it wasn't. Can we tie that back to the resistance piece? And
Yeah.
like when hitting resistance, what the lesson is in that?
Hmm. Yeah. There was a point in the book writing process where it was just bigger. There were more words on the page, there were more things to wrangle, and it started to feel really heavy. And also I hit my capacity for playfulness that I didn't know was there. Right?
Okay.
I didn't know that I could kind of bring that spirit to a project to a certain extent. And then, old stuff came up and it just felt like an obligation, like whatever the opposite thing is
Yeah.
to um the way it was. Yeah, and yeah, there were practical things that just literally more things to manage. We'll do that. Um and so I could not force myself through. I tried really hard, which was so ironic given the subject of the book. I was like your own medicine flavored type situation I was in. Which of course brought up its own shame too, to be honest. I was like, how am I experiencing this when this is what I write about? But of course, like, why wouldn't I be experiencing it if it's the thing I'm writing about? Like, because we keep learning at deeper and deeper levels. So um, I had to, so I did get a nugget. I did get several sort of layers of wisdom from the resistance. One of them was simply just the awareness that I didn't fully have permission in myself to marry something big and playful, that I thought I had to choose a little bit.
Mm. Mm.
So I didn't know that. And then I thought, oh, now this is feeling real. That feels scary. Like, can I
Mm.
have the spirit that this whole thing started with and it feeling like
Big,
weighty? Yeah.
significant. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and the other piece was acknowledging that well, actually my brain just opened like 10 tabs. So one second. Um, right. So there were also in I was also noticing that I also had unconscious ideas of what a book had to look like that I didn't know were there until I was feeling bad about having to perform it.
Mm.
Like a certain degree of explanation of every concept I have, a certain style. So those were unconscious things that my resistance was saying, like, this feels bad, this feels bad, and you're carrying it with you. So, um,
So then would the learning be to let that go, to kind of decide this is what my book looks like?
yeah, I think there's like that's the journey, isn't it? Just finding um more and more, shedding more and more layers of should
Hmm.
with the project that you didn't know were there. I didn't know I had to do this, but this feels bad. Yeah, that's one of the things I had to go through. And I can't say like, oh, I shed them all. But um yeah, came to a place of feeling, no, I can bring this home in my way.
Beautiful. I didn't know, I think I have to do that. It's making me think of working with retreat leaders and how many assumptions there are based on either what retreat they've been to or whatever they've fantasized it has to be, as opposed to what wants to come up, which sometimes could be more simple or could be more complicated than their brain would like. So I relate to that.
Yeah, for real.
Um, Let me ask a question about your magic. So when you're working with clients, and I know, you really help a lot of writers, but creatives in general to keep their projects moving through working with the resistance,
Yeah.
through the undoing. How does your magic show up when they're experiencing resistance? What's that like?
Hmm. So I I love to trust everything that comes up. So I'm paying attention to how they're talking about their resistance. Um, if I'm thinking about it in terms of magic, I feel like I'm noticing their magic um,
Mm,
as it's expressing itself. So maybe I'm looking through the lens of expression magic, but if they're, for example, if they're telling me about how they want calm in their life, but they're saying it with an edge in their voice, I'm, I'm thinking, um, I don't think all of you wants calm in your life. I think there's a part of
mm,
you that has some fight that is being repressed. So let's talk about that. Uh, Trusting the everything that comes up, especially the things that they're that feel unacceptable.
mm, yeah. And do you see people like break through long-standing patterns just from that process of trusting that it's coming up?
Oh my gosh, like absolutely. And often it feels annoyingly simple when it happens. Like because we've thought around it in so many ways to try to fix it. And then we just instead of, going through the thing. So for example, a client would say, has been, struggling with making with, with getting through a book length project and they're feeling like it's not quite something enough. I don't exactly remember the word, but they said I keep thinking that everyone's going to think that what I'm doing is too sentimental. And
Mm,
like, what's wrong with being sentimental? Let's go, let's take the thing that
mm,
you are working so hard to avoid and go straight to it and dial it up. That doesn't mean that we're going to take this part of us and let it ruin our lives, but we're usually just working so hard to avoid something that actually just going straight to the thing that feels like the worst thing about us um
yeah.
feels simple and just opens up so much energy. So in this particular um example, I love to think of really big positive examples of the thing that we are resisting in ourselves. So for example, sentimental. What would you call Taylor Swift if not sentimental in her work? Like she writes she um this is a superstar who is embodying this thing in you that
Yes.
you think alienates you. Um, maybe it's not the worst thing. So it's joyful to see it when that happens.
Hmm. I love it. What I feel like we could transition this into what is a maker? So,
Mm.
is a maker someone who leans into the resistance like that? Like, I'm too sentimental, let me move toward it? Is a maker someone who doesn't um, have a whole objectification of what their day is? What's a
Hmm.
maker?
Yeah. I think a maker is who we are already, and it's someone who is, by virtue of being born, um, collaborating with reality to draw out more life. And when we are embracing our identity of a maker, we're saying, I'm doing that on purpose. So um, it's important that a maker is in collaboration with their life and with the stuff around them rather than um, feel alienated from it and needing to manage it or prove it.
Hmm.
um, like or become something. I don't think we become
Yeah.
makers. I think we realize we already always were one.
So it's like a remembering process.
Yeah, that's well put.
How does a maker's day, week, life look different than a doer or a producer?
Mhm. The funny thing about this identity and energetic shift is that on the surface we might not do anything different, but the way we will experience it will be different. So, um, and we all slip into production land. We all sometimes. But for example, at the end of the day, a producer will be going over their day, looking for the things that they didn't do or didn't fix or need to do differently tomorrow. Um, a maker will look at their day and notice like what emerged, what was alive, and what is alive for me um, in the future. So because a maker is in collaboration with life, they're noticing um, the heat of what feels true and beautiful and pursuing that, even if it feels um, strange or even if
Mm,
there are seasons of aliveness that are on the surface not productive, we're not going to be as makers making ourselves wrong for that or apologizing
mm,
for what's real.
mm. What's the benefit of being a maker?
So much energy is freed up when we are not making ourselves wrong all the time. It is so heavy to carry around a list of undone things
Mm,
and be waiting for a moment when we are, enough. Like there's this sense when we're producers that um, there will be a time when we can earn our being, and then we get to coast, and then we get to express who we really want
right.
to be, right? When I
Mm,
make this amount of money a month, or when I um, move house, or fill in the blank, because it keeps changing, right?
mm,
Um,
right.
so our experience of our time as a maker is it's not that we don't experience pain or struggle. In fact, we might experience our life more directly. But it's lighter. Have you ever to illustrate this example about how it's not as though we escape struggle? Have you ever cried and you didn't feel bad about the fact that you were crying? You were actually just in a just in acceptance of the tears, and
Mm,
it didn't feel painful. It just felt like the
mm,
sensation of sorrow. And
mm,
like there wasn't this it's like watching a movie and you're so beautiful. It's so be like you're moved, right? You're like, oh, I
Mhm.
love that I'm being moved by this. And like
Mm.
we
Just like appreciating being alive.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's so um we don't get to escape being moved by life and somehow be above it, but we're not looking at our judging ourselves and trying to immediately like control and fix it. And it's just
Right.
um it feels lighter, and ironically, we act more efficiently when we're not in resistance to what is currently happening because we can
Mm.
actually work with it. There's,
Yeah.
yeah, there's that layer removed.
What? So I have the book, and one of the things I love about this book is how a person could just open to a page, and each chapter is complete in itself and is going to give a person something regardless of where they are. And then they could go through the sections and, embrace the idea of doing and undoing. And what's it been like being a published author? Like I haven't gotten to ask you this.
Mm.
How has life changed? What are people saying about the book? Like tell me more.
It has been so fun to be able to connect with people about around something that I have sat with for so long. Um, it's one thing to talk to people about bits and pieces through social media. Um, but this work has been something I've sat with for years, and so it's been really lovely. I it's been also a little strange to and really gratifying to hear like different reactions, meaning it lands with people exactly where they are.
Mm.
I was surprised to hear that. I got a really amazing message saying that a Fox News dad found it in someone's house and loved it and was um, immediately bought a copy for himself. And I just thought, oh, that's so amazing. Like that's not someone that was on my like demographic list um, that I submitted to my publisher. But I love that we can connect over our human experience. So I'm grateful that the anticipation, like the anticipation of the thing was probably the most uncomfortable part. Like waiting, like what's gonna happen? And now it just feels like normal life to be talking about these ideas, and I'm having fun.
Nice. Um, so you have your Instagram, you have a Substack where people can read your writing, your emerging thoughts, your making, if you will. Um, any hints about what's percolating? Anything you want to share about, like if people go subscribe and we'll put the links below, like what's coming soon? Because I know you're already thinking about it
Yeah, yeah.
or living it.
Absolutely. There will be ways of engaging with this way of thinking in more sustained, longer form. So there will be a podcast because I really want to be able to engage with people um, in ways that are beyond sound bites and getting to go around people within their day. And I know that I've been transformed by just listening to people on podcasts, like listening to
Yeah.
their consciousness and their voice. So I want to offer people
Mm,
ways of just practicing tuning in to this
mm,
idea. Just
yes.
so yeah, that and a more open offer. Right now, my offers are like one-on-one and a group, so they're pretty high touch and intensive. So I will have something that is a little more open to and where you get to kind of just like live in this perspective for a while.
Mm, beautiful. I like to imagine that these sound waves are hitting the ears of people all over. And in particular, I think of people who maybe don't have a community who are talking about things like that. So you kind of alluded to, um, the frequency that gets transmitted here, and maybe a little snippet of a story that makes someone think, I could do this.
Yeah.
Maria did it, I could do this. Or I can trust myself. I can let go of producing. So if we imagine someone listening and they're not necessarily in the conversation, but this is striking them
Hmm.
and they don't have people to discuss it with, and they don't have, like, I don't know if you relate, but I
Hmm.
always felt a little bit crazy in my family of origin.
For sure. Yeah.
What would you say to that person who just happens to catch this?
Hmm. Yeah, first of all, you're not crazy. And the more that you tune your ears to this, whatever frequency it is that resonates as true in you, um, it's exponential. The more it opens up. So you don't have to strive to make something fit, but lean into the message that is hitting you in your heart, and then just like sit with it and let it roll around, and you'll find it's like what you seek, you'll find. So whether it's, more podcasts or more books, or,
Yeah.
you notice something that someone in the coffee shop around you is reading, yeah, you
Mm,
are, um, yeah, you're not crazy.
I love that. Tune into the frequency.
Yeah.
So, Maria EV Bowler on Instagram, Maria Bowler on Substack, Making Time can be found at all major online bookstores,
That's
I
right.
assume.
Yep.
And let us know how you like this episode. If you found it on Instagram, let Maria know as well. And thanks for listening. Maria, thank you for who you are in the world and for the purity and playfulness of your message. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
We'll see you in the next episode. Bye, everyone.
Bye.